So, today's video is about what is the difference between perimeter and area. So let's start with perimeter. What is perimeter? Well, perimeter is the distance around the outside of a shape. So if I want to know how far it is around this square, I would be looking for the perimeter. An example that you guys see in the real world of perimeter would be like a fence. Because if you think about a fence, where does a fence go? Well, a fence goes around the outside of something, around the outside of a house or maybe the outside of a garden. So how do we find the perimeter of a shape? Well, we can measure the length around the outside of the shape, or we can simply add up all the sides of the shape. So let's start by looking at this shape here, which is a pentagon. And we want to know, well, what's the distance around the pentagon? So to do that, we're going to have to measure the length of each one of the sides. Now, this is a regular pentagon, which means that all the sides are the same. So we'll just measure one side. So if we measure this side, as we can see on our ruler, the length of this side is 4 centimeters, which means all of the sides have a length of 4 centimeters. So the perimeter would be 4 plus 4 plus 4 plus 4 plus 4, which means we would have a total perimeter of 20 centimeters. Now, if you know the length of each one of the sides, you can simply add up all the sides to find the distance around, or the perimeter. So let's look at this example. So right now we have a rectangle, and we have to think about, well, what do we know about rectangles? Well, it's a four-sided shape where it's got two pairs of sides that are equal to each other. So I know if this has a length of 5, then I know this side also has a length of 5. And if this has a length of 12, then I know this also has a length of 12. So if I want to find the perimeter, I have to add all 4 of the sides together, which would be 5 plus 5 plus 12 plus 12, which gives me a total perimeter of 34 inches. Now, this example is a triangle. To find the perimeter of this triangle, I have to add the 3 sides together. And so I see that it has a length of 3, 4, and 5. So if I add those together, this triangle has a perimeter of 12 centimeters. Now, area is very different from perimeter. Area is about the space inside of a shape. So some examples of some things that you see in the real world that show area would be a swimming pool. If you think about a pool, you think about swimming inside of the pool. Well, that's because area is about the space inside. I've never seen anyone swimming on the outside of a pool. So a pool is an example of area. Another example of area is your house or your apartment, because for the most part, we all live on the inside of our house or on the inside of our apartment. So area is about how much space is inside of your house. It's about how much space is in your bedroom or the kitchen or the bathroom. And it's all about what's inside. So area is the measure of the inside of a shape. So one easy way to find the area of a shape is by counting the number of squares inside of the shape. So if we were to break this rectangle into squares and count them, we could find, well, we could find the area. So if I look at this rectangle, I can count that there are 24 squares if I actually count them all up. So that means this rectangle has an area of 24 square units. And then this rectangle, if I count all of the squares inside this rectangle, I also find that there are 24 squares inside this rectangle, which means this rectangle has an area of 24 square units. This rectangle is a lot skinnier than the other two, and if we count the squares inside this rectangle, there are 10 squares inside of this rectangle, which means this rectangle has an area of 10 square units. Now, another way to find the area of a shape, especially if you don't have the squares nicely fitting on the inside, is by using an area formula. Every shape has its own unique area formula, and we're going to learn more about the area formulas later on in the unit. But here are a few formulas that you are already familiar with. So I know in elementary school you learned about rectangles, and you learned that to find the area of a rectangle, that means to figure out how much space is inside the rectangle, you multiply the length of the rectangle times the width of the rectangle. And a square, same thing. With a square, if you want to know the space inside of a square, you would multiply one side by another side, and because both of the sides are the same, you would just do side times side, and that's going to tell you how much space or how much area is inside of the square. So in closing, always remember, perimeter is about the distance around the outside of a shape, while area is all about the space inside.